To lead us in this next panel, where we will be discussing the science behind GMP compliance. Thank you so much. The founder and CEO of AGCAN, please welcome Atiya Farouz.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Atiya Farouz. I'm the founder and CEO of AgCan Consultancy. We specialize in emerging markets, so we do a lot of movement of cannabis materials. We do a lot of consulting on cultivation, GACP compliance, and GMP compliance. And I'm joined today by my lovely set of panel members here. And we're going to talk a little bit about the science behind remediation, some of the different options that there are, and how that relates to GMP-compliant product and moving it into these new markets. I'll have my panel members start off to introduce themselves. So if you could just let us know who you are and give us a brief overview of your technology, that'd be fantastic. George, why don't you take us away?
I'm George Terry. I'm the Executive Vice President of RadSource Technologies. We use X-ray photonic decontamination in order to decontaminate cannabis to GMP standards. We've got over 300 units in the US, Canada, South America. Very popular cannabis solution. We also do blood, sterile insects, and military applications as well.
Brian Casey, Chief Revenue Officer of Vis Labs. Vis Labs focus on cryopasteurization, using vapor technology and cryo to remediate and kill microbials, bacteria, and aspergillus. We also have aseptic packaging, using modified atmosphere packaging to extend shelf life stability for product to preserve it throughout the supply chain.
Joseph Edwards, Chief Science Officer and Vice President of Yofumo Technologies. We use microburst ozone to achieve full cellular cleavage of all known microbiological compounds, focusing on volatile organic compound preservation.
I'm David Zurio, the CEO of GOC Nexus. We are the new kid on the block. We are doing cold plasma decontamination, which is a complete new way how we want to treat cannabis and to preserve the ingredients.
My name is Arthur DeCordova, CEO and co-founder of Zeal. We use radio frequency, which is non-ionizing radiation, to decontaminate cannabis. We're active throughout North America, here in Europe with GMP solutions.
Excellent, thank you. So for GMP compliance and for any products that you're moving, there has to be product specifications. And we had a little bit of chat in the pre-discussion about the fact that the microbial standards are actually quite different depending on the country that you bring the product into. So we have GMP in Germany and the requirements there versus the UK versus Australia versus Canada. If anybody would like to talk a little bit about some of the differences, I know Joseph definitely knows them off by heart.
So one of the things I think we see as being a major inhibitor to moving cannabis throughout Europe or even worldwide, when we take a look at the bigger picture, is the unification of global microbial standards. What are we looking at from a pathogenic response? What are we looking at from a yeast, mold, total bacteria, gram-negative, biotolerant, aerobic, or other developed microbes such as coliforms and aspergillus become into play very quickly? And how do we delineate pathogenic bacteria, pathogenic contaminants versus standard yeast and molds? And how do we really unify those testing platforms, as really I think has become the major issue across all of our technologies? And how do we solve those problems while still preserving the volatile organic compounds that make cannabis, well, useful to our patients and consumers?
Excellent. And David, we talked a little bit earlier about kind of, why people are having to do remediation. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you foresee the issues that cultivators face and why remediation solutions are necessary?
I see the situation that we have in indoor facilities already very good standards for cultivation to minimize the microbiological burden, but we see also in this really strict environment several times that the products are failing and are not in specification. And when we are now thinking about that, we have, for example, in Germany, an increasing demand for materials coming now from glass houses or sometimes from outdoor. We will have in the future much more challenging situations to bring this product in specification. And according to discussions we had in Germany, we have heard that the authorities expecting that currently 40% of the material is reaching the German market, never entering the pharmacies. And that's the reason that is the microbiology. So we have a lot of challenges to solve in this field.
And not just only do we have differences, of course, in the things where they're grown, whether they're outdoor, they're greenhouse, or they're indoor, which can heavily impact the total microbial load of the product, but we have differences in testing. So the product may test in its country of origin as passing on microbial, and then through transport, for example, there may be some significant changes in that process. And so I think, Brian, your technology really speaks to the use of packaging to limit those kinds of differences.
Yeah, so we focus on preserving and cleaning the product, whatever technology you're using, but really it's the preventative step of preserving the product throughout the supply chain. So you want to put it in a packaging format that would be removed of all oxygen. When you clean and purify the cannabis, there's still moisture present in it. Moisture with oxygen, it's going to increase organic growth. Organisms are going to come back into the product, they're going to increase, and they're going to grow. So you want to put it in a packaging format to preserve the quality so that doesn't happen. It doesn't degrade the cannabinoids, the terpenes, the trichomes, the quality, and it doesn't dry out or oxidize. So put it in an environment that has a barrier-proof packaging, seal integrity to preserve the quality. You can ensure throughout the supply chain that it's going to make it to its destination at the same quality that leaves your facility.
And for the rest of you that don't offer a packaging solution, what do you normally recommend to your clients when they're using their technology to kind of safeguard between differences that happen during transport?
In our case with the X-ray, it brings it down to zero. So as long as you keep it in a bag, you can put it wherever you want. It's not going to grow back if it's at zero microbial load. And then you can just keep that bag sealed until you do your final packaging. Some of our customers actually do the treatment in the terminal package, so they could put it on the shelf for 6 months to a year without it growing back, no matter what the moisture or whatever, because there's no microbe in there for it to grow back.
As a company that focuses on raw flower decontamination without the benefit of sterile packaging or the ability to go through packaging, one of the things that we deeply focus on is stable active water content, proper PPE and handling, and utilizing both facility health and biosecurity in order to prevent recontamination across the platform. However, one of the things that I think everyone struggles with is touch contact, transfer contact contamination, and especially with the length and breadth of supply chains, and they get longer every day as we start looking at international distribution. How do we have a compliant cannabis that can be removed from packaging, looked at, tested, re-sterilized, or a clean-in-place process, and how do we overcome those hurdles? And while we do drive to zero, it still very much relies on both compliance as well as active water and drying concepts that do promote those stable sterilization techniques.
Yeah, and so I think that, oh, go ahead.
You didn't hear from Arthur.
Pardon me?
You didn't hear from Arthur.
I was just about to ask him a question, yeah. So Arthur, for example, with your technology, of course, it's quite similar, right? The idea is to decrease the microbial load completely and then push it through the process. But with, I think, all of your technologies, they're quite new compared to like what's sort of considered the, I would say, like unintentional golden standard of remediation using gamma radiation. And so I'd love all of you to chat a little bit more about what your differences between your technology and gamma radiation are, and also how your technologies have undergone the GMP validation process for use in European facilities.
So I'll go first. So I'm on the bookend here with George, and George's technology is an ionizing solution, and it does sterilize the product. We're a non-ionizing solution, and our goal is not to sterilize the product, but to bring it down to below the threshold to preserve some of the natural properties of the plant. So it's a little bit different philosophy. But our technology works by using the inherent water molecules in a flower. So it oscillates those water molecules at 27 million times a second, and that creates friction. Friction creates heat, and then that drives the microbial pathogens below the threshold.
And how have you been able to have your process validated for GMP? Is it currently in some GMP facilities here in Europe?
Sure. So we began the process of getting our GMP turnover package, the IQ, OQ, PQ, 3 years ago here in Europe. So we've since installed units throughout Southern Europe, and now Germany, Switzerland, and Greece, which are now operating commercially.
Excellent. And David, go ahead.
Yeah, we are using cold plasma. It's a complete other way. We have no ionizing radiation inside. We have no chemical residuals, and we are not working with heat. It's based on the fact that we are ionizing only the gas molecules and using that for treatment. And when we are stopping the low pressure condition, then everything disappears to the normal conditions, so no residuals. And so it's a complete other way. And we are currently in the validation process, planning to have the EU GMP validation finished end of the year and starting then the operations for first flagship processing hub here in Germany and then to distribute it to other regions.
We're currently active for GMP processing through South Africa and Portugal, pursuing Switzerland and Germany actively. One of the things that we also focus on is non-residual based remediation and really looking at how can we, again, preserve those volatile organic compounds. But as we go through that process, one of the big hurdles that we've faced is continuing looking at handling of the biomass, transfer of the biomass, which is one of the things that I feel is a large struggle for the industry, as the more touch and transfer contact we have, the greater degree of acceptability. And while similar to George's technology and Arthur's technology, we do try to drive to near zero. One of the things that we also suffer with is improper drying handling practices that have the high potential for recontamination, and how do we look at clean in place processes or multi-step processes that are maybe able to remediate or inhibit that.
So our vapor technology, we're using vapor and cryopasteurization to kill and remove any airborne carcasses. So not only are we killing, but we're trying to also remove any of those carcasses, but we're getting to a 6-log kill step. So we're ensuring that we're doing a 6-log kill of the product and bringing it to complete sterile. We're doing internal validation with our technology that we started about 18 months, 2 years ago. So that's doing internal doping at our lab, at our facility of cannabis product, running it through our system to validate that we're getting to a 6-log kill. And it's just the efficacy of the track and trace and the research we're doing around the doping of the product and running it through our system to ensure we're getting to pharmacopoeia standards.
So there's a reason why gamma irradiation has been the gold standard for over 20 years. And that's because it works. And it's very effective, and it's got minimal impact on the terpenes and the cannabinoids because of the wavelength at which that photon hits that product. It's smaller than the molecule of the terpene or the cannabinoid. So what we've been able to do is take something that's a gold standard, and we just backed off a little bit down the electromagnetic spectrum, and we're able to use X-ray, which is very useful in blood. In other applications, it's still ionizing radiation, which accomplishes the goal of sterilization without having to take your product off-site, pay somebody to process it, security, transportation. So you're able to do it on-site with the same gold standard technology that you would get with gamma. As far as GMP, we're GMP ready on our largest 2 units. We're currently got them outside the U.S., I'll just say for right now. And we've got some applications that we're actually doing on 3 different continents, 4 different continents now as of today. Good show, by the way. GMP for us, there's a reason why there is a GMP standard, right? If you have flour that's almost at 0, or you have flour that's at 0, there's a big difference, because the one that's at 0, there's hardly a chance that they're going to grow back any microbials, right? Because there's nothing to start with unless you've introduced something. But if it's almost at 0, over time, over pressure, over moisture, whatever, you got a possibility that those microbials are going to probably grow back, but maybe not to the same level. So
I think that when people talk to me as clients asking me like what to recommend for remediation technology, there's a lot of different questions that come to mind. As he mentioned, gamma radiation is available in many of the countries where cannabis production is happening. The facilities are already established. These are typically a $30 million investment. So it's not like you're going to decide all of a sudden that you're a big cannabis cultivator and you should make your own irradiation facility. So when you look at what's kind of the easiest option for you, being able to transport off-site in some cases so you don't have the headache of managing the process yourself, may be easier. And in other cases, you may be in regions where they don't have those options available. And then the onus really becomes on you to look for another technology. We have also seen, I think everyone across the board, seen some issues with VOCs or terpenes, for example, being maintained throughout gamma radiation. At least in the 100,000 kilos I've run, we've had some problems with terpene preservation through that process. And that's actually led to the birth of a lot of these technologies, trying to find something that will ensure the product is compliant without damaging the product too much. And in particular, although terpenes are not an active pharmaceutical ingredient, they are becoming more and more important year by year on people deciding how they want to treat their product. I'd love to go through each of your technologies and talk a little bit about the ones that are machines you can have in-house and ones that are more used as a service center. Arthur?
We are an on-site technology. Some of our customers do tolling for their neighbors and friends, but that's our business model.
our business model based on a service center approach, and the reason for that is when we're working with cold plasma, we have to work with the open product, which means we need a really strict defined environment under clean room conditions to ensure that we have no cross-contamination. And therefore our believing is it's not only machine selling, we need a full standardized environment, and therefore we are preferring a service center model.
We're an in-house solution, and while we do operate service centers throughout the world, we prefer to put the technology in the hands of the cultivator and operator so that they're able to fit that tool into their process step at any point that it's applicable, and should they need multiple process steps for a clean-in-place process or happen to intake product at various points in its post-harvest life cycle, that they're able to interact with it at their discretion and at their need.
So we are selling equipment, but we're selling equipment that has high capacity. So a lot of our customers that are purchasing the equipment, we can do a lot of throughput with our technology, anywhere from 12 kilos to 50 kilos per hour. So we have groups that are purchasing it for internal use to consume their own internal supply, but also offering services to neighbors in neighboring facilities, just because of the capacity and the additional downtime of our equipment. So we have customers doing both services.
And we're in-house solution, and about 30% of our customers are tolling, so they're actually running product through for other people that bring product to them at a charge per pound.
And what do you think are some of the key factors, like when you have cultivators come to you and say, you know, they're evaluating your solution, and what are some of the questions that they should be asking themselves before they decide if it should be an in-house or a service, and how they should decide between your technologies? Be nice to each other.
Just ask for test results. I mean, that's the big thing. You know, go on, see if they have studies, see if they have test results. You know, see how many. You know, ask around, ask for references. You know, that's the biggest thing to me. I mean, that's how that put us from the 200 to the 300 limit. You know, as far as the U.S.
I think it's really for the operator is, you know, there's consolidation. It's a shark one, but it's of the five of us here, what two will be here in a year or 3 years from now? There's consolidation coming. Then from there, it's capacity of the operator, the quality of their contamination level, and then the liquidity. Do they have capital? Do they have funding? Can they afford a purchase of our technology? We're all across the board with the purchase and the price of our technology, so it's kind of what fits into the operator. You know, they need to be conscious of where they're going in the industry.
Similar to George, one of the things that we always recommend is looking at the COAs. Data always validates. Empirical studies speak the truth. If they don't have the data, if you can't provide the data, if you can't show through a COA that you have preservation of cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids, if you don't have a throughput metric that matches your production, then it's likely not the technology for you. And why I think we've all tried to shape our technologies to be as form-fitting as possible, one of the things that all of us, I think, actively pursue is breadth of usability. There's a likelihood that multiple technologies will fit. What fits best is going to be on what your unique needs are. Are you a high throughput client? Are you a low capacity client? Are you looking at preservation? Are you looking at the need to have in-house? All of these things become factors. And when you start looking at the COAs that come with that, I really feel that that's where the proof is.
Yeah, and I think it's also essential to think about what's your starting specification, what's your end product specification, and defining what technology works to your end specification, and then you can do the right decision. And think also about what are specifications which are not from the pharmaceutical quality standards coming from. If you have any thinking about organics or sustainability, then you should integrate that also in your decision metrics to make the right decisions.
I'll add the depth of the bench. So does your company come with a microbiology background, pedigree? Our company, Swords, are in the food pasteurization business. We have a PhD in food science on our team. I come from big pharma, so the GMP environment is very much in my wheelhouse.
Yeah, and we see that a lot. I do a lot of GMP compliance for people, so I get them prepped for their GMP certifications, and we have to have this conversation with them about the fact that like their current team doesn't have the background to do this work. So we can get you your GMP certification, but when we leave, who is going to continue to run the facility? And ensuring that people understand, even when you take something in-house for a technology, it can be really fantastic, but having someone on the team who's able to work with the service provider and understand what that's going to be as an undertaking for yourself. In many cases, I'm sure you have clients, for those of you that provide equipment, where they become a service hub. Even though they purchase the equipment for themselves, it's the most lucrative thing if they're not maxing out capacity to then offer it as a third-party service. But then they automatically automatically take on a lot of that liability now that they're servicing someone else's product.
You know, interesting thing too is you got to look at what you're growing and your strain, okay? Because what people will do is they'll grow one strain and they'll throw it through testing, and they might have, you know, high CFU for testing limits, but it's not like 600,000 or 1 million of CFU. And then they go in with a solution, and that solution doesn't get them down to the testing level because they picked the wrong solution at the time for that. Now, some of the solutions, if you have low CFU, they're fine. You know, they'll get you down below the testing limits, you know, but there's only a couple of the solutions that will actually get you down to zero, even with 500,000, 600,000, you know, 1 million CFU. And that's when you have to ask for test results and studies and look at different strains and look at different contamination levels from the control batch.
Yeah, I think it's really important to know like what your contamination levels are. And like we've talked about, it is cultivation, whether you're indoor, greenhouse, or outdoor. Those contamination levels will vary depending on the strain and the environment. As you cultivate an environment long enough and you don't have good SOPs for cleaning and sanitation, there's going to be an environment that grows with more bacteria and mold that's going to, over time, you know, increase your levels of the product you're growing. So it's very important to make sure that you have good control and quality assurance, quality control, so you know what your input is of the contamination you're using and the output. You always want to have internal steps before you send it out to third party to make sure you're getting your kill step.
And I would add the contamination profile also plays a large effect in that. Are we looking at simple yeast and mold and aerobic bacteria contaminations, or more developed contaminations that include aspergillus, coliforms, pseudomonas variants, gram-negative biotolerant bacteria? How does the contamination profile or cultivar susceptibility play into your production, and utilizing a technology that allows you to combat all of the potential contaminants that you may be facing or hurdles that you may be facing from a regulatory microbial compliance perspective?
No comments. All is said.
As Charles Munger famously said, no further comment.
Fantastic. I think it's a good thing that you bring up contaminants as well. So just for clarity to everyone here, we're talking about microbial contaminants. We're not taking out your heavy metals. We're not taking out any of your pesticides. We're not taking out anything else outside of these things. And we do have clients that bring in product that has pesticides, heavy metals, et cetera. Once they're there, they're there. And a good, honestly, general policy, but for cannabis, it's garbage in, garbage out. So if you have really low quality product or you have poor sanitation, you're limiting yourself on what solutions you can use to remediate that issue to bring the microbial load down. But you're not going to miraculously put it through any of these remediation technologies and it's going to become all of a sudden better quality. If the trim quality is not there, if the terpene profile is not there, these things are not going to be able to boost it up. And so we do sometimes see people thinking that this is kind of a blank slate kind of thing, that we can just put it through remediation and all of a sudden it's going to meet, and that doesn't mean it's going to meet all the other specifications as well on the rest of the product. If you had to talk a little bit about the microbial limits, and of course, in particular, I'm thinking of how tight the limits are in Australia and the UK. What are your thoughts on the current microbial limits that cannabis products have to meet? I know it's going to be a tough one for you guys. But
I think they're wonderful. I think zero should be the goal.
okay, fair point, fair point. Anyone else have any comments on that?
I second George.
I also have to agree with George here. I think zero should be the goal, but I think as far as cannabis testing goes from a lab-based level, we need more specificity around pathogenic contamination and more definition around what actual contaminations we're combating instead of assays that are looking at dozens or potentially hundreds of potential variants of yeast and molds. We need to start delineating exactly what we're looking at. Is it probiotic? Is it proenzymatic? Is it pathogenic? And how we're affecting those individual contaminants, and why, yes, we should drive them all to zero. What are we driving to zero? And knowing that, I feel, is paramount as well.
I not fully agree. I believe we have to look more that we are talking about a phytopharmaceutical. And of course, from the theoretical basis, zero would be nice. But my feeling is if we want to bring every product in zero, then we are destroying compartments inside of our cannabis, which is essential for the entourage effect. And therefore, I think we have to look more in detail and to find better out via data and research what is really the right threshold which is acceptable for the safety of the patients.
I'm going to echo that because it's a balancing act. You want to pass your regulatory compliance, but you also want to preserve the quality of the product.
Well, I'll just tell you that's why I told you guys to look at test results, because there's a few of the technologies up here that can get you to zero and still maintain your terpenes and your cannabinoids. do your homework.
Yeah, I don't think we've touched on it enough, but the crucial part is killing death and destruction to organisms. But you want to preserve the trichomes, the terpenes, the cannabinoids, the structure, the color. You want quality product. You want your consumers to have the best experience possible. You don't want to degrade this product. The more touch points, the more exposure. The supply chain of the global market is vast and it is long. You have different pressures, different climates it's going to. So you really want to do the best you can to preserve it when it leaves your facility. You don't have control after it leaves.
Similar to the old adage that cleanliness is next to godliness, there is also the function of preservation of the compounds that make cannabis valuable. If we're destroying the thing that we've spent hundreds of thousands, or in some cases $1 million to create, produce, and distribute, there's absolutely no point in cleaning it if there's no value after the process is done.
I also believe that we will see in the future more focus to the terpenes. It's currently not part of the pharmaceutical quality standards, but I'm pretty sure when we can show in the cultivation process that we really can strictly standardize the profile of a terpene for a specific strain, then also from the authorities will come the situation that they are asking that we are integrating that in the pharmaceutical quality standards. And I see also a really need to think more about the perceptive quality of the end user and patients, because they're looking for the organoleptic parameters, which are currently only partially playing a role in the pharmaceutical evaluation process.
All right, well, we're close to time here.
One more uniting statement that I want to warn everybody about, okay? You have, what, 5 of us up here right now talking about the benefits of decontamination and GMP, which is important for public safety and public health. There are people out there that are consultants that are going out and telling you, you should grow clean, you should be able to not have to use any of these technologies, and it's because those consultants are they're going to those growers and they're trying to get them, sell them services to grow clean. So these people that are out there are trying to get from the growers for you guys to grow clean, but nobody else has to grow clean. The tomato people don't have to grow clean. You know, all the other people have, you know, decontamination methods. So when you hear these people say, oh, you should grow clean, you know, why? Eggs aren't clean, chicken's not clean. You know, there's so many things. You know how many people die from organic lettuce in the US? You know, so, you know, there are technologies out there between us and there's even more that'll actually allow you to fulfill the mission of public safety and be able to decontaminate. And when somebody comes up to you and tell you you should grow clean, they should just go away.
I completely agree, and I think looking at it from a perspective of quality assurance instead of bioremediation or contamination is really kind of the thought process that we recommend to a lot of our clients and a lot of our cultivators as well, is what actually is necessary for the product, what steps do you need to take, but far and beyond anything else, what is the quality of the product that's being put into the market, and that becomes paramount for each and every one of us, I feel.
Just one thing to add. There's a perception, particularly in the United States, that if you have to use one of these technologies, you have bad product. Now, the United States is not there by any means, but if you use the analogy, well, is your milk pasteurized? No one's against that. And that it's for the consumer's benefit that we are reducing pathogens to make them safe.
Yeah, definitely some food for thought. I think remediation is very much talked about in many places as a negative, that you've done something wrong, that it's kind of a last step. It's because you've messed up, and there's an issue with that. And so it's just really important whenever you decide on your remediation technology, you do the research. You're welcome to talk to any of these gentlemen after the panel. I'm sure they would love to stick around for the next 45 minutes to an hour answering questions and find out what works for you. But yeah, remediation is something that is going to be in the cannabis space for the foreseeable future, and is something that everyone should decide on their own facility and needs what makes the most sense. We're up on time, so I just want to thank everybody for coming to our panel today, and thank you to our panelists.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more time for Atia Ferouz and everybody. They're going to stand here and take a picture. We have one panel left.